Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Ay, still not understanding.
Hi guys, welcome to this video. Today we'll be doing investigations. I have a list of parts of investigations that you should know, starting with the aim. So the aim of the investigation has to do with what the investigator wants to achieve or to determine. It usually starts with the words to investigate, to determine, to test, or to prove. The aim is very important because this is where you will find your variables, the independent and the dependent variable. You will find them from the aim. Now, a hypothesis, on the other hand, is a statement about an observation that has not yet been tested. So what it actually does, it answers an investigative question. So for example, what is the effect of light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis? So you'll tell us that as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis will also increase. This hypothesis must include both variables. So with variables, we have the independent variable, the dependent variable, as well as the controlled variable. The independent variable is the one that the investigator manipulates or changes around to see if it has an effect on the dependent variable. And then the dependent variable is measured or it changes due to the changes being done on the independent variable. A controlled variable will be any other factor other than the independent variable that can affect the dependent variable. Usually on the extract, it is keyworded same or whatever was kept the same. So when you draw your graph, your independent variable will go onto the x-axis and the dependent variable will go on the y-axis. Independent is on the first column of a table and the dependent variable is usually on the second column. But remember to find your variables from your aim if it is asked in a question. Now these variables are different from a control group. A control group is usually a second setup where the independent variable is excluded, usually due to just prove that the results that are found at the end of the experiment are due to the independent variable and nothing else. In this case, we would exclude light in our control to prove that in the experiment it was light that caused photosynthesis to increase. Validity, on the other hand, goes back to the controlled variable. So any other factor that affects our dependent variable must be kept the same. Reliability, on the other hand, has to do with repeating the investigation or increasing the sample size. However, you need to be careful here. You need to specify how many times the investigation was repeated or how many more times it should be repeated, as well as in the sample size, how many more samples to use. Do not just say the investigation was repeated or something like that. Now, calculating an average also does improve reliability, so take note of that. Last but not least is the conclusion. So it just gives us the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. For example, as light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis will also increase. So here we are stating the effect of the independent variable on the dependent variable. Let's answer the supplementary exam for 2025. Reading through the extract, it says good hand-eye coordination is essential to perform well in sports. Athletes can be trained to improve their hand-eye coordination An investigation was conducted to determine the effect of performance training on hand-eye coordination. The procedure was as follows. 5 girls, all 11 years old, were selected as participants. A ball catch test was conducted to measure their hand-eye coordination, where the girls bounced a rubber ball off a wall while standing 2 meters away, and they were required to catch the ball each time it bounced back. The number of successful catches in 30 seconds was recorded. The test was repeated 3 times, and an average was calculated. All the girls then participated in a performance training program for 6 weeks, with training sessions held twice a week. The ball catch test was then repeated on completion of the performance training, and you have the results on the table below. So before you answer the questions, it is important to analyze the results. We can see for each participant before training and after training, their average number of successful ball catches have increased. Now we can go straight to the questions. 2.5.1, A and B, those are the independent variable and the dependent variable. Go back to your aim. Hand-eye coordination is dependent on performance training. So the independent variable will be performance training and the dependent variable will be hand-eye coordination. Moving along to the next question, it says, how many training sessions did each of the girls participate in? From the extract, we see that it was done for 6 weeks and the training sessions were held twice a week, which gives us 12 sessions. Next question is, what was the purpose of the ball catch test? So the ball catch test was used to measure hand-eye coordination by measuring the average successful ball catches in 30 seconds. So you can say to measure the average successful ball catches, which determines hand-eye coordination. So the next question, you state 3 ways in which the validity of the investigation was ensured. You need to go back to your extract and check 11-year-old girls were used or selected. We can see here that the rubber ball was bounced off a wall while standing 2 meters away for each of the girls. And the number of successful catches, they were recorded in 30 seconds. Or you could say that the same ball test or ball catch test was used for each of the girls. I would also assume that they are using the same rubber ball for each of the girls. We were only asked to name 3, so any of the 4. For the next question, you describe one way in which the reliability of the investigation can be improved. Going back to the extract, they tell us that the test was repeated 3 times, so it must be repeated for more than 3 times. And then the performance training program was done for 6 weeks, so it should be for more than 6 weeks. They used 5 girls, so they can use more than 5 girls. Moving on to the next question, it says, explain the results of the investigation. And when you look at the table, you can see that the average number of successful ball catches, they increased after the training. So that tells us that definitely performance training does increase hand-eye or improve hand-eye coordination. So you tell us that successful catches increased after the training, and therefore performance training improves hand-eye coordination. Which for me is basically the conclusion. The performance training program has increased hand-eye coordination of the 5 girls. That would be the conclusion, or just basically saying performance training improves hand-eye coordination.